Again, welcome to the PNA Community Newspaper Forum. We are joined today by a panel of representatives from crucial infrastructure partners. Our panel will share details on how your organization can improve its business model, find new money-saving options, and streamline the organization to improve overall workflow. I'm happy to introduce our speakers today. Joining us is Michael Shapiro, founder and CEO of TAPinto, Melvin Robinson, Director of Client Development at Tucker, Albin & Associates, Michael Rogin, CEO and founder of Telecom Strategies, Swiderski, President of eType Services, Michael Hochberger, President of MESJ Associates, and Mark Frizzell, National Sales and Implementation Coordinator at mydistrict.net. This group represents many different aspects of our business. After today, our hope is each of you will leave with valuable new tips or suggestions to improve your business. Over my years working with the news media industry, I have found the partner organizations we work with day in and day out to be an invaluable source of information. They have helped me and many of my coworkers to understand new concepts, bring to light changes in the industry before most people know about them, and reinforce my knowledge of tried and true techniques that support the publication of our products across the entire country. So we have a great group together here today, and I think everyone's going to take away really valuable information. So to start, I'm happy to pass the conversation to Michael Shapiro. Michael, what valuable, useful tips can you share from your experience working with the news media industry at TAPinto?
Thanks so much, Matt, and thanks for having me here today. For those of you who don't know, I'm the founder and CEO of TAPinto. I'll talk a little bit about TAPinto later on. I'm also a columnist for Editor and Publisher magazine, and I'm really excited to be here today. Next slide, Matt. To give you just a little bit of background about TAPinto, we're a network of more than 90 locally owned and operated online local news sites. We currently have sites in New Jersey, New York, and Florida. Though we can franchise in pretty much any state. A number of our franchisees are hard copy newspapers that utilize TAPinto as their online presence. As it says here, we're committed to objective reporting, and we have no editorial page, and we have strong journalistic standards. Next slide, Matt. So, I'm going to be speaking about today ways to save money and to also, improve your business. And I first wanted to talk about communication tools. And I know some of these will be familiar to people on the call. Some of you probably use these, others don't. But I wanted to mention some that we have found particularly useful. One is the Google Workspace. In particular, Google Calendar. As well as Docs and Chat and even Google Meet, as well as Microsoft Teams. There are both free and paid versions available, and we have found these to be really good tools that are either free or very low cost. Next slide, Matt. In particular, using Google Drive to share documents with fellow members of your team. Second is Google Chat. We implemented Google Chat about 3 months ago, and we created different chat rooms. We have found that to be a really great way for everybody to communicate rather than email people and don't know if they've got the email or not or whatever. It's really created a really good collegial atmosphere here and a lot more collaboration. And then, of course, Google Meet and Microsoft Teams, I'm sure, Zoom as well. Next slide, Matt. In terms of sales tools, I found one that has been very helpful, and it's free. It's called Calendly, and it's a really good way to set up appointments and accelerate sales. I've also used LinkedIn, both, the basic version, as I'm sure all of you are on, to reach out and connect with people. But also a Sales Navigator, where you can do more in-depth searching and more messaging. That one has a cost to it. And there's also a system, there's a number of them, but one system I use is called Cleverly, where you can actually send messages in an automated way to prospects. You just need to be careful about crafting those messages so that it's personalized and it's not salesy. But we have found these tools to be very effective for us as well. Next slide, Matt. In terms of marketing, I think a lot of publications don't think about their own tools that they already have to increase revenue as well as to increase readership. So, for example, utilizing your website or your hard copy newspaper, utilizing your email list, your social media platforms like Facebook, as well as your relationships to drive advertising leads, as well as to get new readers, to get new subscribers. We have found this to be really effective. In fact, most of our new leads come through lead generation that we have on our site itself, because people are reading our site, businesses are reading our site. It's a great way to generate advertising leads. Also, you can use email marketing tools. Some of them are free, some of them are not, like HubSpot, Constant Campaign, Constant Contact, Active Campaign. And just as a tip, it's really important to be consistent with whatever marketing plan you're going to do. Whether it's daily, weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, that doesn't matter, but consistency is important. You don't want to do a marketing campaign for a week and then not do anything for 6 months. You want to be consistent and, of course, deliver on what you promise. Next slide. In terms of your website itself, couple suggestions. One, it's really important to have some way for people to sign up for a newsletter and prompt people to sign up. When you do that, you have a kind of cordoned off audience that is your audience. Nobody can take it away from you. Facebook can't take it away from you. Google can't take it away from you. It's your own audience. So having that newsletter and having a good database of people signing up for it is really important. Second is that whatever your news focus is, whether it's local, regional, state, etc., that's what you want to make front and center on your website. That's why people are coming to you. I see a lot of websites where they're a local news website, but all the time they have like state coverage and things like that cloud out or crowd out your local news coverage. You don't want to do that. People are coming to you for a reason, and you want to fulfill that need. Obviously, you want to keep your content up to date. I've been on a lot of newspaper sites where, say it's a hard copy newspaper and they publish once a week or once a month, their only online content is published that day. And so if you're a reader of that site, you come back 6 more days during the week, you're seeing the same content from a week ago. You want to keep your content up to date so that there's something fresh for people to read every single day. And lastly, you want to enable readers to contact the reporter of each story that is written. It's a great way to get news story leads, as well as to develop relationships with your readers on a more personal level. So those are some website suggestions as well. Next slide, Matt. I wanted to just open the floor to any questions people might have. I know we have a short amount of time, but thank you so much for your attention today, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Thanks, Michael. We did have a few questions come in while you're speaking, and a reminder to our attendees, you can ask questions right through the chat function to send them to the organizer or to myself, and we can pass them along to our speakers. First one references back to the messaging you'd mentioned, using Google Messenger and other message services. How did you go about building or maintaining your culture in the office with those remote messaging services? Like, did you have a strategy behind that, or a process?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think we're a little bit different than most because we don't have an office. Everybody works remotely. We've done this for 13 years now. We found it to be very effective. Implementing Google Chat was not a huge jump for us, but it was a much better way for us to communicate with everyone, because up until then, we were using email, and we had created a Facebook group, different Facebook groups for all of our different divisions and things like that. But with Facebook groups, Facebook only shows even those posts to a minority of the people that are on it. And so we found people missing things, even on email. We found people, missing the email, etc. Now with Google Chat, people don't miss anything. It's showing up right away. So I really encourage everybody to utilize Google Chat. It's been a great communications tool and really has brought all of us even further together.
Great. Another question came in, your reference to LinkedIn for sales. How frequently do you suggest salespeople post to LinkedIn?
Well, I mean, I think posting relevant content, I would say you want to do a couple of times a week. For example, if you find an interesting article that you think people in the profession or possible clients of yours might benefit from, post that to LinkedIn. You don't want to be on LinkedIn like just promoting all the time. People kind of see through that. And same thing in terms of using LinkedIn in terms of sending messaging. You want to try to develop relationships, and that's the most important thing. A too salesy approach turns a lot of people off, so you want to be careful about that.
Great. You'd mentioned on email lists, having a form, something like that on your website to build them. Is there other suggestions you have for news media companies building an email list?
Yeah, I mean, if you have an online site or a hard copy newspaper, you can put ads up to encourage people to sign up. Second thing is, one of the things we do in our articles online is we have standard text that appear in the article, encouraging people to sign up. We even have a sign up widget in every article, so people, as they're reading the article, can sign up. Also, we find it very effective when we do events, particularly when we sponsor events, to table at those events. And when we table, people sign up to get the newsletter, and they give permission for us to send them the newsletter, and we have found that to be really effective. And lastly, we created these palm cards. I don't have one here to show you, but these palm cards that encourage people to sign up for the newsletter. And we have our reporters and really everybody here give out those palm cards every event that they go to. So that helps to market the site and also to get people to sign up for the newsletter.
Well, thank you, Michael. That is all the questions we have at this point for you. And I think we have to move on a little bit for time to go to our next speaker. But anyone has questions for TAPinto or for Michael can reach out to him directly or post into the channel. And if we have time at the end, we'll take some more questions. So we'll move on to our next speaker at this point.
That's great. Well, I'll tell you first, I was very fearful of following Michael, who always does a great presentation, and he did one today. So what I wanted to speak about is finances. We were talking about simple ways to save money. I represent Tucker, Albin, and Associates. We're a commercial collection agency. We do third-party collections and first-party audit services, which basically means we call as our client to recover delinquent accounts, acting as them. But when you speak about this whole area of how do you save money, if you start from the very beginning, publishers, whether you're newspapers, whether you're magazines, whether you're radio, whether you're TV, it's advertising dollars, right? So you got salesmen who go out, they make the sale, they bring in the accounts, they structure the advertisement in a way that makes the client happy, and then the advertisement goes into the publication, right? That's a sale. No, it's not. It's an order. It's not a sale until it's paid for, right? So we're talking about accounts receivable, and how do you maintain your accounts receivable in a way where the money's coming in and being remitted in a proper time frame internally. I'm not here to sell my service at the moment. Anyone who wants to use our collection agency, you guys know how to contact me. But I find it best when I'm able to help my clients develop an in-house process that actually works. So what do you need to do? It's about time-sensitive receivable management. There are things that must be done internally from point A to point B, or from time 1 to time 30 to day 60. And these things must be done systematically if you really expect your AR to be managed properly. So there's a little slide up there and thank you, Matt, for dressing my slide up, because I'm not a presenter or a presentation guy. So Matt actually made my presentation look a lot better than what I sent him, and I'll send him flowers later on. But let's talk about it. So an account that's less than 30 days, and I'm assuming most of the publishers have 30-day terms. What do? Someone on your team needs to verify that the invoice was received. This can be done 2 ways. What I find most effective is when the account is set up, the salesman must make sure he knows who's supposed to get the paperwork. And when that invoice goes out, someone on the AR team, whether it's a billing official or someone actually with the title of AR or account manager, needs to verify before there's any discussion as to whether it'll be paid or not, that it's been received by the proper people. And while you're waiting for payment, if there's any dispute, that dispute needs to be identified. It needs to be done before 30 days. And usually the salesman is going to know, so he has to be involved in the process. AR may find out about it when they're calling to to verify that the invoice was received. And so what do we see in publication? Someone won't be happy with the layout of the ad at this early stage. So whatever concession needs to be made, that'll be determined by the staff. But the objective is to make the customer happy and give him little to no excuse not to pay the bill. And most of it's going to be paid in that 30-day bucket, the vast majority of receivables. But now let's talk about the accounts that go from 30 days to 60 days. And what are we doing in between that process? This is when I advise sales to be deeply involved. And from a publisher standpoint, if you're really thinking about it, and I'll tell you from a sales guy, a lot of publishers will pay the salesman with the order. He'll make his commission when the order is received. Salesman will not like that I say this, and as a salesman, I'm giving out a deep secret, but I'm going to deny it if anyone tells it. So you should not pay commission to your salesman before the account is paid. Some companies will utilize a process where they'll charge back the commission if the account's not paid at a certain period of time. As a salesman, I will tell you again, no one cares about chargebacks. I'm caring about the next sale. I'm as a salesman who's been in the industry where there were chargebacks. There's a certain amount of chargebacks I see every day on my commission statement. I expect them to be there, and I'm just trying to make enough sales to cover the chargeback and keep making my commission. But if I've done the work, if I've sold a product or a service and I have not been paid for it yet, now I care because I feel like I didn't get paid at all. So now I'm going to go back to the customer and say, hey, you know, my accounting team is saying that this hasn't been paid. What's going on? Once again, he'll figure out if there's a dispute, and usually in our part, what I'm finding in your industry and in all advertisement, that is, sometimes the customer will have unrealistic expectations. They'll place an ad and they think their business is supposed to quadruple in the next 30 days. And when it doesn't, they're saying, well, that ad did nothing for me. The ad did what it was supposed to do. It advertised your business. It advertised your service. So we need to be paid for that. So in the 30 to 60 day bucket, having sales deeply involved and a report from sales. This is a simple form that you can create that the salesman has to come back and tell you, okay, you got these 6 items, these 6 sales, these 6 orders were made, and these 4 were not paid, and we're in that 60-day bucket. We're in between 30 and 60 days. So he needs to come back and tell you what he's done. Did he call him? Did he do a visit? Is there a dispute that he knows about? Is there payment expected? Has the customer promised to pay? Easy steps that will resolve a lot of issues before they get too aged. But some accounts will go into that 61 to 90 days. Now, there has to be somebody, once again, I don't care if it's an internal person who's considered AR, I don't care if it's an office personnel, someone needs to start making collection calls. They don't have to be nasty calls, but they have to be a demand for payment. Payment is expected. What day can you pay? What's going on? Do you need payment arrangements? Can you pay half now? Can you pay a quarter now? Those weekly calls and demand letters should be on a process. It should go out regularly. If there's a dispute, someone needs to be authorized at that level to arbitrate the dispute. Sometimes to make concessions, sometimes to say there'll be no concession. Give them the authority to do that, and they'll solve a lot of issues. But now we're at the 91 to 120 day window, and this is where things get serious. Now we need to elevate the level of discussions. It should not be left just to the AR personnel or the collections personnel. A supervisor, whether it's the publisher himself, and usually it should be someone under the publisher, but it should be internally escalated. Those supervisors, that supervisor or those supervisors should make those phone calls, and they should be serious. Listen, we've done the service, we need payment. If we do not receive payment, we'll have to take additional steps. And those can't be empty threats. I don't care who you're utilizing, don't make them empty threats. And a final notice should go out. And that final notice has to be before 120 days. Once that notice goes out, usually you can make it a 10-day demand for letter or a 5-day demand for letter. You're going to see payment come in because now they understand there's a serious nature here. If the dispute has not been successfully resolved, then we know what's going on. That final notice should include a threat or promise of collections or litigation. I don't care who you utilize. I don't care if you utilize your cousin Sam, a collection agency, mine hopefully, or your attorney. Now, at 121 days, the decision has to be made. And in your industry, it should be made by the publisher or the CFO. And it should be determined, what do we do now? And if you look here, thank you for pushing it up a little bit. That's a checklist. Was payment made at all? When was the last payment made? Is there a dispute? What is the dispute? Can it be arbitrated? What is the balance owed on the account? Because some things are not worth time. And what should be done? When you make those decisions, you'll find that if you do this consistently, regularly, strategically, you're going to solve a lot of your internal processes. For any publisher on here, if you're looking at accounts and you've looked at your AR and you have a large amount of dollars, or large, once again, it's always perspective, because what's large to one publisher won't be large to the other. But if you're seeing a lot of dollars past 90 and 120, it's because your process needs to change. And if you change your process, you'll save a lot of money while recovering the money that's due to your company. Simple. So obviously I'll answer any questions at any time that anyone has. I hope I can help somebody. And if I haven't helped any of you guys, I'm sorry. Not my fault, blame that.
We did have a question come in from the group here. Where do you see publishers, news media industry folks have the most problems along that cycle you've laid out, like the 30 to the 60, so on, so on? Where do you see them tripping up most often?
It's 91 days. See, what happens is, I want you guys all to think about this. You have an internal team, and listen, I've spoken publishers, controllers, CFOs. Now ask them the direct question, well, how many dollars do you have past 90? They don't know. And you should know, because that, you don't need to know what's below 90. Your internal team should take care of that. But it's that 91 day, because I'll give an example. I have a client, they're fairly large. They have 9 internal collections people. And their collection people do a really good job, but they work accounts till they're almost dead. They'll turn over accounts to me that are 9 months old or a year old. Well, when I look back at their notes, they really stopped calling the people 4 or 5 months ago, or they made sporadic calls. There was no strategic decision. And that's because they know their customers and they had this relationship and they're trying to work things out, which they should do, but not for an extremely long time. And what I want the publishers and the people, the executives on this call to understand is, you need to involve yourself in the process. You don't need to know everything, but you need to determine what time do the things need to land on your desk or someone you empower to make decisions. Let me say this final point in relation to that AR management. Accounts at 90 days are recoverable 80% of the time. This is no matter what industry you're in, but it's particularly relevant for advertisement. At 90 days, that account that is at 90 days is recoverable 80% of the time by you, by me, by any attorney. Once you get to 6 months, the recovery rate drops to 50%. 50%. So if you're not paying attention at 90, you stand to lose. If you got $100,000 past 90, you stand to lose $50,000 a day.
Melvin, we had another question come in that this might be, you may or may not have an answer for this one, but how would you recommend collecting from advertising agencies? Many are often well over 90 days, and the publishers are told, you'll get paid when we get paid, since they're using sequential liability.
Yeah, well, first of all, that wasn't what your contract said, but that's what they'll tell you all the time. And I understand how difficult it is to pay an advertisement agency. A significant amount of your business come from them. So that is always the process. When do you make the decision? Someone may be on this call. We talked about one of her largest advertisers. I won't say the name, but her or the advertiser. But I had to tell her, well, if you place them in collections, you're probably going to lose that client, that customer. Can you afford to lose that customer? And the answer was no. And I said, well, don't place them in collections. Okay, so you have to determine, when you're looking at these advertisers who take advantage of your terms and stretch you out, can you afford to be stretched out, or should you stop doing business with them? Remember that they need you as much as you need them, but they never let you know that.
Thank you. That's a great answer right there. Just for the sake of time, I'm going to keep moving on. But again, Melvin's information's on the screen. We're going to send it after the call. And if we have time at the end, we'll take some additional questions. So thank you for sharing that valuable information. And next up will be Michael Rogin. If you'd like to take yourself off mute, and we'll have you talk through.
Good morning. I want to thank everybody for inviting me to present to you. My credentials, my history is fairly self-explanatory. I am the founder of Telecom Strategies. As you see, I've had over 30 years in telecommunications, marketing, and sales. And for the last 12 years, I've been doing consulting. Basically, I began working for Bella, Pennsylvania before the breakup of the Bell system. We all thought that we'd be secure for the rest of our lives until divestiture took place. And then, frankly, the business was in chaos in the deregulated environment. I went through that. I've been through those wars. Thank you. Now, so who's Telecom Strategies? We're independent consultants, as we say. The challenge in our business is staying aligned with the technology as it's evolving. It's not just a matter of finding clients. It's a matter of knowing what's the best advice for a client. It's a matter of focusing on knowing certain industries, and we focused on the news media industry now, as in the past we focused on nonprofits. Essentially, as the mission states, we want to serve our clients as independent advocates. We are agents for a number of companies. We're not paid by the clients, we're paid by the companies that we represent. Next slide. What is consulting? People think that consulting is just a matter of buying a phone system and getting the best price or getting certain needs taken care of, whatever. In today's environment, it's more of a holistic view. It's taking a look at from what's out the door of the internet service provider to what's in the door, whether it be cabling, whether it be you choose to go on cloud-based solutions, which is where the marketplace, frankly, is going, or those clients who have on-site premise-based systems that really want to make them work better. It's also a matter of taking a look at the billing. We've seen too many examples of billing errors where people just haven't reviewed their bills because they're so confusing. And that's one of the biggest areas of saving money initially for small range clients that I've seen. I had a client who was paying 20 cents a minute on a per minute basis because no one had ever reviewed their Verizon billing. We saved them over $350 a month because we converted them to 3.9 cents per minute billable on a 6-second increment, so that the 1 minute, 1 second phone call that in the past cost them 42 cents now costs them less than a nickel. It's unfortunate, but you see those things out there because telephone bills are just so confusing. When I worked at Bella, PA, my biggest endeavor was to interpret a telephone bill to a client because of all what they refer to as the USOC codes, Uniform Service Order codes, that would confuse everybody. And what do? We get the bill, we need the service, we pay it. What we choose to do is help you evaluate it. Whether you stay on Verizon, whether you stay on your present carrier, and also in today's terms, taking a look at, taking a look at competitively bidding for services and scrutinizing contracts. One of the things that I always say to a client is, there's a tremendous marketplace out there. Let's bid. Let's go out to 3 or 4 different companies, no more than 4. That gets very confusing. Let's take a look and not just see who's got the cheapest price, because the cheapest price isn't going to help us invariably. Short history, I probably, after the breakup of the Bell system and before I set up my own consulting company, I probably worked for about 25 different companies that came into the marketplace and then vanished, leaving clients, leaving employees in a lurch. The reason I set up my company was because I wanted to take that experience and those clients and now make sure that that didn't go further. One of the things that I do for my clients is I say scrutinize contracts. There are so many issues there where we can save money. There are issues there where we can prevent you from spending money needlessly. I think when I was talking to Matt initially, one of the things I talked about was that on contracts, particularly for internet service providers and for hosted carriers, there'll be things they refer to as automatic renewal clauses. Well, we used to see those on contracts. You could read through it and find it and see the terms and then make sure that your client didn't get automatically renewed at the end of a 3-year period. Now what we're seeing is that they refer to websites, so that on the website it can be changed and you will never know it. My job, and with the job of a good consultant, is to help you understand the ways and the pitfalls, so that you don't fall into that crevice where when you choose to change a carrier, they say, sorry, you just re-upped a month ago. And I've heard this so often. And I've had clients call me and say, well, they just re-upped a month ago. How can you help me? The reality, unless there's a grievance, a tremendous grievance, there's nothing I can do. But I can help you ahead of time. I can help you ahead of time. Any good consultant can, by taking a look at the contracts, seeing what those terms are, and making sure that you don't fall into that crevice. That's just one example. As I said before, we review outdated billing. Contracts will have billing because billing changes all the time. So let's understand what it is. But you don't have the time invariably because you're running your organizations. That's my job. That's the job of a good consultant. And also knowing current and projected needs. You may know that you have 10 or 15 or 20 people in your office now that stay in the office, but you may choose to have them on the road, salespeople on the road, particularly in the rural Pennsylvania areas where they're spending so much windshield time. Well, let's know that we want to put them out. If we want to put them out there, what will get me to that point where I can do that easily? I can do that and cost effectively. Next slide, Mac. Okay. So what I've seen in my experience as a vendor for PNA is that I have clients with 25 and 30-year-old phone systems who are going to vendors and saying, what do I do now? And in some scenarios, the vendors are no longer in existence. In many scenarios, the manufacturers are no longer in existence. Toshiba used to be a big one, and that they were all across the country. Well, about 4 years ago, they got out of the business. Otavi got out of the business. These are systems I see in offices, AT&T Merlins. I used to sell them. Out of the business. So how do we help you with those systems where you say, well, I have a few extra phones in the back, but if I need service or there's a thunderstorm and a lightning bolt hits my system, what do I do? That's a challenge. That's a challenge that we're addressing with people cost effectively. The other issue is voice and data quality, as we see it there. We have clients who have the old Verizon lines, and they tell me that on rainy days, they can't make phone calls. Well, that's copper in the street that's no longer supported. I know, I used to sell that copper. What's the alternative? We work with you to plan that alternative. And the last thing probably is the new workplace. I mean, COVID has essentially accelerated a trend that was out there. We couldn't go into our offices. We had to work remotely. And initially it was chaos. It really was, because people went home with their cell phones and they took their Windows 98 laptops that they had in their basements, and somehow they just couldn't communicate anymore. That marketplace has evolved, and we see opportunity without wanting to be opportunistic. There are people who are now working remotely. I am. I've been working remotely for years, who can coordinate and not just make a phone call, but can be accessed, can have full services as if they actually sat in the office. And we talked about previously how sometimes being in the office you have a certain amount of contact. Well, with the right telecommunications, you have that kind of contact, that kind of contact where you can just pop into somebody's quote office and say, hey, what do you think? That's the new workplace. That's where we're going, even as we emerge from the COVID environment, because now the networks are more secure. The networks are more adaptable to that. Next slide, please. Let's talk about a case study. And I think we have one of the people, the person from this case study on the call. Good morning, Jill. A number of years ago, we came up to the Bucks County Herald up in Lahaska. They said to us, some of our bills are kind of high. How can you help us? So we took a look at it. We took a look at we saw the dollar figure, but we took a look at the contract. Their billing was okay. Their billing was appropriate. But we took a look at the contract and pointed out to them what was referred to as an auto renewal clause. And we said, if you want to make a change, we need to do it in this time frame. Did they see that clause? No, it's meant not to be seen. Forgive me for being cynical, but I used to write those clauses. We pointed out that should we want to make a change, This is the time period to do it without getting automatically renewed for a given period of time. Sometimes the original contract. Then we took a look at the phone system, and one of the issues that Joe brought to our attention was that on rainy days, they couldn't use some of their lines. They were getting crosstalked, only on rainy days. I had heard this before. They said, how can we resolve it? They had called the vendor. They had called the line company. Everyone said, we're fine. We're fine. The vendor sent out technicians on dry days. Service was great. On the rainy days, the problems existed, taking a portion of their business, taking them out of a portion of their phone system on a rainy day when it may be a very important day for them. We said the only solution is to get rid of copper, because copper is what was out there in the streets, and copper is no longer supported. You need to go on fiber. We made that change for them on their existing phone system, brought them to fiber, and all of a sudden they had services. I remember getting a call, Joe, I think from your dad, where he said, now we can do things we never knew we could, because we had moved them to a fiber environment that's not subject to the weather, and that's being fully supported. That's the kind of thing we do. We're not just going out there saying we have to rip everything out. We're not brokers. We're full-time consultants. We want to see, and we want to build a lasting relationship with you, so that it's wonderful when I get a phone call 2 years later from someone who says, this may sound like a stupid question, but, well, no, that means that there's an issue that we can assist you in resolving. And it's done at no cost to you, because, again, we're compensated by the vendors that we've utilized. As in point of fact, we're now working with Bucks County Herald on another change up, because at this point, as I mentioned before, and I don't think I'm saying anything out of school, Joe, companies are realizing they don't need the space that they had before. They're working remotely. So why pay a big rental for 23, 24, 25 people when you only need 8 or 9 people in the office? But you want to be together. You want to have that continuity of operation. You want to know where people are. You want to act. You want to be in contact with them as if they were sitting across the aisle. That's something that we're doing with Joe right now. Hopefully in the near future, to put him in more of a cloud-based environment, of which there are many cloud providers. And what we did was that we got 4 bids. We took a look at them. We said which are good, which are bad. What are the business needs? What are the metrics that we can get on the number of calls each week per person? How can we supervise our salespeople just as if they were sitting in the office, know the calls they made, and know exactly how we have a cohesive office environment utilizing the cloud? That's the world we're in, ladies and gentlemen, because the reality is you need to get out of the old phone systems, because at some point they're going to fail. It sounds like a terrible message, but it's the reality. So with that, next slide. We are here to answer any questions you have. We're here to work with you. We're here to have meetings such as this. We'd love to help you out and put an end to this mystery of what's a phone system and what do I do if it fails, and what's my billing, and what's out there, what's possible, and who's reputable and who isn't, and who can I call on from the day I sign to the day I close my business. Thank you very much.
Michael, we did have one question come in on here that that was not answered by what you went over there. How many employees does someone need to have before they can really go into moving in to have a system? If they only have 5 employees, is there options for them? Or if they have 10 employees, where do those options lie?
Well, it's interesting, because I have a client I'm working on, a PNA member now, that has 7 phones. I have, depending upon the carrier, I've had as few as 1, the sole proprietor. So they really, that sometimes pushes us to certain organizations that don't want to go below certain minimums. But no, we are specifically targeted for the small mid-sized market, so that anybody is somebody, and yeah, anybody is. You may not, again, some systems, some of the cloud-based companies may be looking for bigger targets, but there is always somebody out there who can help you. That's my job, to direct you to that.
Great. Well, thank you very much for sharing the information, and everyone on the call, we'll be sending out Michael's contact information afterwards, so feel free to reach out to him. And I can say from personal experience, he's easy to work with, and a great conversationalist, so give him a call.
And Matt, I want to thank you for guiding me through on these slides. We both know it kind of went to a last minute thing.
Not a problem at all.
Yeah.
So we'll jump on to our next speaker here, and that's going to be Thad. If you wouldn't mind unmuting yourself and coming on the line.
Good morning. My name is Thad Swiderski, and I'm the president of eType Services based in Austin, Texas. We've been providing CMS, e-edition, and mobile applications for community newspapers for over a decade and work with 500 newspapers nationwide in 42 different states. eType Services is focused on providing solutions that do help to save money, and we are the low-cost leader for weeklies, primarily, all over the United States. Go ahead and move forward. So I've kind of broken this up into three buckets that I'd like to talk about, and the first is digital. Most of the major newspaper chains have consolidated operations at the home office in order to save money. The family newspaper groups that are all over the United States, probably in the range of 5,000 to 7,000 across the US, have no opportunity to consolidate operations because they're a family group. But vendors like eType Services or TAPinto or Town News have emerged to help these family papers utilize services and allows them to save money. So outsourcing to providers to do your hosting and support that you can count on and that will answer their phones can absolutely save you money. The vendors on this call in all different kinds of verticals and outsourcers and vendors in general can keep the operation out of your shop. So for example, doing your own website can actually be more expensive than utilizing a vendor to host and support your website. Full service web, which is something that some vendors offer, which allows a short staff newspaper to have content pulled from their newspaper and put up online for them, keeps them from cutting and pasting and spending hours putting up content on their website that they've already published in the paper. Services like classifieds, calendars, events, and milestones are other ways that you can push the input of data for your website or for your paper onto the customer to fill out the form. In today's world, in the cloud environment, it is mostly assumed that customers can fill out their own information. And having a classified person man a desk at a family newspaper is really a waste of resources. And as Michael pointed out, I think adeptly at the beginning of this call, there are plenty of social tools that can create efficiency. We use Slack, for example, even though we are a Google certified reseller. And Slack is a great way for your team to stay in contact over certain things like production or this week's paper or even, you know, I have a personal Slack channel with every employee so that we can kind of chat off to the side about their weekend or whatever. Next slide. The second bucket would be office and workflow, which includes many of those suggestions that Michael had, but also kind of what I was just talking about. If you have servers on site where you're storing files, even your InDesign files or any, you know, Word documents or whatever, that can easily be moved to the cloud and save you a lot of money, as well as headaches for when your server eventually does go down. We would recommend a digital first workflow. And in a digital first workflow, you would use your website to essentially as a content management system that you can dump out to print. And it really moves the focus of your operation from the printed edition to the website. I think what we saw in March of 2020 was the digital revolution. It happened. And we saw the ceiling for the first time as to how many people will come to your website. Perfect example is a small town in Texas with 2,000 unique visitors a month for the last 10 years saw in 1 month growth to 23,000 unique visitors in 1 month. And the reason was everybody wanted to find out what was going on in county about COVID. So we saw the ceiling all of a sudden, and we realized that the ceiling for digital is much higher than the ceiling for print. So newspapers, especially family weeklies, are in a position where they continue to focus on print and see a 3% decline year over year. With the new ceiling revealed, we now know that our business can transform into a digital first business. And this is not an easy transformation. Trust me, this is not something you're going to do overnight, but it can be done and needs to be done for the future of your business. Print and digital circulation should also be managed in the same place. For example, if you call the dentist, you expect them to know when the last time you had a tooth capped or filled. You can't have circulation employees, unaware of the difference between your digital and your print subscription. So keeping those in the same place can actually help you with your renewals and help you save money in the long term by keeping your clients happy. And the last area is in production. There are now many reputable firms that you can outsource ad and page design. In small towns all over America, it is very difficult to find people that are skilled in InDesign. And what I always say is, as soon as if someone in a small town learns InDesign very well, they move to Philly because they can get a better job there. So ultimately, well, actually, I say Dallas because I'm from Texas, but there are plenty of reputable firms that can help you with ad and page design at a very low rate and help you save money. Secondly, carriers are very expensive. The postal system is also, a great option, although it has gotten a little rocky lately and can sometimes be expensive. But when you compare dollars to dollars between carriers and postal is much cheaper. And there are vendors, not on this call, but there are vendors that can help you save money in the US postal system. And lastly, shop your printing. There are plenty of good presses in your area. And by shopping the printing, you may even be able to get your local printer to come down on their price. So always be looking for the best deal when it comes to production, because ultimately production is a fixed cost that you need to reduce. And you can reduce it by doing a few of the techniques that have been done really all over the country by family weeklies and save some money. Questions? Oh, one more. I forgot I threw this in at the last minute. Video. Video is a great way to save money because you can get much more engagement, for example, out of a city council meeting than you can after writing the story. Many people, read the local paper for coverage of not only local sports, but also local government. But they don't always take the time to read the story. If a fight breaks out at the city council meeting, the video of that fight will go viral. And video is a great way for you to spread out on social media, for you to tell your story, and it is very cost effective. Video is now portable, easy to understand, and YouTube has made it really accessible to just about everybody. So we highly recommend using video on your website, on your social channels, as a way to save money from writing stories about everything that happens in town. Questions?
On your last slide there, a question did come in, Thad, asking, what is a recommendation on video length?
I would recommend the shorter the better. Under 3 minutes is probably the best use of a video clip. Now, obviously, you want to edit down the longer videos, and maybe you can't get it down to 3 minutes. For example, a video of an entire football game is entirely unwatchable. A video of an entire city council meeting is probably going to put you to sleep. If you can edit down the video to the key moments, I think you're going to get better engagement.
Great. Thank you on that. The one other question that did come in was, you said digital first. You know, is there a reasoning for that? A lot of the papers on here are very print centric still, so I can see where that question would come from. You know, is there reasons to kind of change that mindset?
Yes, 2 reasons. First, the future of the business isn't digital. What we're seeing is 50 to 80% of all website traffic is coming from phones. People want to read your content on their phone. You need to get it on the phone in the best possible format so that it can be read by this emerging group, and it is a growth area for newspapers. So getting your content in that format is the #1 priority. Secondly, I understand more than most the cost associated with taking legacy content and moving it into the digital world. We take PDFs, rip the content from the PDF, create an XML document, and feed it into the back end of the website so that you don't have to sit and cut and paste. That's expensive. And that in the process is essentially taking a legacy analog format and creating a digital version of that. And we create lots of digital versions, e-edition, web, mobile app, blah, blah, blah. If that content is natively, and you probably created in Word, which is a digital format. So we're taking digital to analog and then back to digital, and we're creating cost at each of those steps. So ultimately, if you can start digitally, you can dump out to print much cheaper than you can go from print back to digital.
Great. Well, thank you for that answer. That was very concise. If anyone would like to reach out to Thad, his contact information is on here. And again, we'll be passing that around later. So we'll keep moving along here. So thank you again.
Thanks, Matt.
And one of our other Michaels. So if you come on and let us know a little about MESJ, and also, you know, walk us through some of the tips you have for us.
Great. Thanks, Matt. First of all, thanks, Matt. It sounds like I wasn't the only one who you kind of held my hand to put together both presentations and understanding how this works. This is the first time I've ever done one of these. We've built our business over the last 5+ years totally on references. And so this is a learning experience as well. So just a little bit background on me. I've got 30 years in the newspaper business, 10 years at a fast growing publisher of 30 weeklies on Long Island. And I was head of operations at American Lawyer Media and specifically the New York Law Journal, which is the largest daily, it's a 48-page broadsheet daily newspaper, largest daily newspaper in the country. What MESJ does is we help reduce the editorial content, the editorial expenses by providing cost-effective content. We have a blended workflow that's both onshore and offshore, which combines domestic editorial precision with offshore research talent, and MESJ creates emailed newsletters. We do list research, we do web editing, aggregated content, all white labeled for the publishers who use our services. Our team is located worldwide, so up-to-date content and overnight deadlines are never a problem. We have access to aggregated editorial databases that some local newspapers may not, to provide more, more complete kind of content. What I've found interesting about this mix of newspaper-related businesses that, Matt, you assembled here is just the variety. I mean, we go from technology to root sales to telecommunications to production, and we're editorial, and so we all come at this from a different angle. And you as publishers and executives have to be experts in so many different areas, and it's as having all of us having, or many of us having worked in publishing, know that it can be baffling. So, but the one thing that we all agree on is that your core competencies that no one else can replicate is knowing your area, knowing from an editorial coverage standpoint from an advertising sales standpoint. You know your local businesses, you know how to sell them, you know the peculiarities of those businesses, and that's how you kind of survived and succeeded. But that leaves a lot open to which you can get help to save money. So as we've helped various publishers save money in this world, we've noticed some things that are adjacent to what we do that definitely you can kind of I always used to, when I used to come to this as a publisher or as an operations person, I always felt that these were kind of generalists, generalizations about the business, and I needed specifics. So I'm going to go to the general, but then I'm going to go to the specifics about what we know is what we can do. Look, repurposing and organizing content on a unified theme. I think we've all understand the value of special sections, but those special sections can also be spun off to do newsletters and do separate web pages and do, whether it's a restaurant web page, whether it's a welcome special section or welcome newsletter or web page. All of that can be done without spending any money on content, and hopefully allowing that for there to be a unified theme in that, so new people potentially will be coming to that. Collaboration. There are historical societies in your area. There are a lot of different areas that will provide content for you at a very low base. That may be selling against myself, but it's not really, because it's a different area and a different area of expertise. Partnering with advertisers, books, food delivery, events. These advertisers can help you with content as well. Obviously, there's a Chinese wall between advertising and content, but the advertisers themselves can often provide great story ideas and great ideas as business people in the community. They can provide really helpful suggestions. Donating unused ad space. Donations can help build relationships. Obviously, you don't want to give away what you can get for, what you can get real money for, because Melvin for sure wouldn't like that. So I think that's an area that can be used to develop goodwill and also if you are competing with web-only publications, print ad space, which still goes for a premium compared to web ad space, is something that can, still has perceived value and can differentiate you from a web-only, a smaller web-only competitor. And then this is where we come in, is outsourcing and specialize, and what you do best, and let your partners and vendors specialize. I think there's nobody on this call, at least on the vendor side, who would disagree with that, because you can only be, so proficient in so many different areas as a publisher and executive. So what I'd like to do is just do an example. It's a case study, but it's a non-case study because I won't use specifics of the company. And you may want to put together a business-related newsletter that you could sell a sponsorship to, okay, from either a law firm or an accounting firm. This is a new product. It's something that you haven't done before, let's say, and you think that there may be, a couple of lawyers or accountants in the area or ad agencies in the area have told you that this may be something that you can tap into because you're for whatever reason. And so the subject content is, let's say it's rewritten, I'm trying to be as specific as possible. I know this doesn't apply to everybody, but you can also extrapolate from this in, 10 or 15 fold, and this is how ultimately we save you lots of money. And the content is a rewritten press release, or it's documentation from public, documents of, public companies that happen to be in your area. Either whether people have bought shares or sold shares, or lots of different information about that's publicly available. And you would say, well, okay, I can get a freelancer to research, write, edit, format, and post this, in one shot, right? And maybe it takes 4 hours a week, and maybe you want to do it daily because you really have a strong demand for that, and so it's 4 hours a day. Let's use, okay. So, but to have a smart, business-oriented person do all those steps, it's going to be $30 an hour. Maybe it's $25 an hour. I'm using specifics. We all work in different markets in different areas, and and this is something new. So you're not displacing anybody. And what we do, this is something we do all the time, and we take that project and we say, okay, because via either automation or offshore research or a labor arbitrage, we can take the research part and the formatting part and the posting part, and we will move it elsewhere. And then we'll have somebody smart here doing the editing part. And all of a sudden, that, let's say $120 a day becomes $60 a day. Okay, and if you do the math, that all of a sudden becomes compelling. And so what have we given you in that situation, right? Forget the savings. I mean, the savings are obviously there, and that's what we're talking about here. But it's more than that. You've got management overhead that has to deal with a regular feature. You've got vacation time. You've got sick time. You've got somebody to manage that. You got to bring in a substitute when that either freelancer or person in-house that you may have dumped this on, because they can handle more work. That's there. You've improved the breadth of your content potentially, because we have access to lots of aggregation services that a local newspaper may or may not have access to. What do you do when there's turnover? And that institutional knowledge walks out the door, and you're no longer, and you have to find somebody else to do that. And it may or may not be on good terms, or the person may, for whatever reason, may not have done a knowledge transfer. So all of a sudden that knowledge walks out the door. When you use somebody like us, we have the knowledge, and we share it, and we also that's not a problem. Best practices. We may see something that has worked in a non-competitive market that you may want to use. We've been able to kind of start to assemble best practices for this feature. And if the newsletter flops, there's no fuss, no muss. You don't have to fire a freelancer. You tell us that we're not going to do this, or we're going to try something else. We don't lock you in on anything, and you've tried something, it didn't work, we move on. And what has happened historically for us is that the publication slowly realized that this can be expanded to other areas, web posting. We get into production, web editing. We do lists, we do real estate transfers, we do dockets, all this stuff that, while it's part of your local offering, may not be an area where is your kind of special sauce. And our special sauce is just like every one of these vendors, is that we've laser focused on an area that may or may not be, really is not your core competency, but because we don't want to get into long form journalism, we don't want to get into selling, all that stuff is yours, and nobody could do that better, and we don't pretend to. But all this other stuff from web hosting to telecommunications to all that stuff, I think we can all kind of provide without you kind of forfeiting any kind of control or for quality and perhaps in most cases, save money.
That's great, Michael. Thank you very much for that. I'm gonna, for the sake of time here, I'm gonna move on to the next person here and keep us going here. So I'm gonna bring Mark up. So thank you, Michael. I appreciate you sharing that.
Okay, hello everyone.
Hey.
I'm going to talk about the distribution of the print circulation of the newspaper, the distributors, the carriers, and where we can save money there. So I have 3 items. We can move to the next slide. I have 3 items that will help with that area. Merging single copy into home delivery has been a big money saver for a lot of distributors. What we can do is we get the information from the publisher and we provide a web application here that I'm showing you some screenshots from that web application. And merging the single copy and home delivery enables the publisher to eliminate distribution of single copy and keeping the same distributors for home delivery. So the stack out sheet is one way that shows the single copy can be merged into home delivery. So that's been a great feature for a lot of distributors, getting the paper out in a more efficient way. Another item is going to be merging routes together now that circulation is declining. Merging routes together allows you to eliminate carriers and letting the existing routes be larger and the carriers making more money, delivering more papers by merging routes. So it's called load balancing, route optimization. And yes, you can have a Route Smart do it for you, which is very expensive, and it's also very disruptive because they're going to make all new routes. But what our system does is allows the distributors to do it manually, a few routes at a time, so it's not very disruptive. And our mapping software allows you to see the routes and determine what streets you want to go to which route to eliminate one of the middle routes. So merging routes together definitely saves distributors money by eliminating carriers. And the third item, we can implement other alternate pubs. So whether the publisher has the information, getting it from the other alternate pubs like New York Times, IBD, local publishers. If the publishers have it, it's great. If not, we can work with the local papers. We do work directly with New York Times, IBD, Wall Street. We get data from them, and we can bring those other publications into your delivery and help them have more efficient routes by adding these alternate pubs. We also work with Doorfront Direct, which is magazines. That's been a great filler for making routes more efficient. We're also working with parcels. We have our own parcel application that allows local areas certain areas to have shippers work directly with the publishers. So the publishers get a cut from it, the distributors get a cut from it, and the carriers have more efficient routes by delivering packages at the same time they're delivering newspapers. So making routes more efficient is very important out there, and we have ways of helping you make that happen. So those are 3 ways that the field can save money and make everything more efficient. Our application is mydistrict.net. I'm willing to do a demo for anybody that wants to see it. We are home delivery based, but just bringing in the single copy now. So we have a single copy application separate if you have single copy only, or you can have both. And that's my presentation.
Mark, we had a question come in from the group here as you're the one speaking about delivery, and previously someone had mentioned going from carriers to USPS, and I figured they thought you'd have an opinion on that. What's the advantage of carriers over going to USPS for delivery purposes?
Same day delivery. A lot of times the postal will delay it 2 or 3 days before getting out to the carriers or getting out to the subscribers. So it's very important to have the news that day. So having a distribution, make sure that it gets out that morning. That's the big one. And I find the cost is better for the carriers to distribute the paper as cost for USPS, but that's changing as well. So, but those are 2 reasons.
Thank you on that one. The other question that came up was, from your experience, how much percentage of carrier workforce can be eliminated with efficiencies?
Quite a bit these days. I know a lot of routes out there now that have been the same size in the same area for many years. And obviously over the many years now, the distribution has gone down quite a bit. So it really saves a lot of money by distributing, by merging the routes together. And if you haven't done it in many years, route optimization will definitely save you a lot of money.
And then we had one other question come in about carriers while you're speaking there. Any suggestions on finding carriers or better ways to source them? There's been an issue of getting carriers workforce supplied lately. Anything from your side that you've heard, tips or suggestions on filling those roles?
Just the a lot of the local communication, if you can get that, like even Craigslist or the different websites that are local for hiring. You can get to the bigger ones that are national, but if you stay local, you can find a better. An old trick that we used to use is just putting flyers out on laundry rooms and different places, and that's certain ways of doing it.
Great. Well, we've ran a little bit over time today, but I think we had a lot of great information shared across the board there. And at this point, we don't have any additional questions for the group here. So thank you all of our speakers for coming in and sharing your information with everyone. It's greatly appreciated. And thank you to all of our attendees for coming on. We'll be sending the video out this coming Monday to everyone and be sharing that information as well as the deck along with contact information for all of our experts who joined us today. So again, thank you everyone for coming on, and we look forward to seeing you at the next session of the PNA Community Newspaper Forum. Have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.